Today we're going to be reviewing the Uppababy Cruz, which is the lightweight model available for use as a daily stroller from Uppababy. The Cruz is a bit smaller and more specialized than their larger model, the Vista, but besides its more limited lifestyle applications, it's quite a solid stroller generally speaking. We'll start as usual with a few stats. When you fold it down, it's 57 by 36 by 94 centimeters, and it weighs just under 10 kilos. Its true weight capacity in the seat is 22.7 kilos, going from the US info, even though it's marked as 15 kilos if you buy it in the EU, but that has to do with regulations and what they can advertise for their stroller. The weight capacity in the shopping basket underneath is 10 kilos, which is quite a lot for a stroller of its class. A few notes on comfort both for you and your child. Both the seat and the bassinet are of a pretty standard size for a small size daily stroller. You won't be getting that oversized luxury feel you'll get with the larger model, but still, it's meant to fit your child as long as you need a stroller. Kids come in all sizes, but I would think that with the Cruz, you should generally be aiming to end regular use by 3 or 3.5 years old, or else consider upgrading to a bigger model. As far as your own comfort is concerned, the Cruz rates well on all points other than driving. It's easy to fold and can fold with the seat attached. It's lightweight and small, the textiles are easy to remove for washing, and it requires relatively little maintenance. The wheels aren't air-filled, so you won't have to deal with pumping or flats, and there aren't any brake wires to adjust. The shopping basket is pretty great too, large and easy to access. The front wheels may need some special attention from time to time, but I'll get into that later when discussing the mechanics. Actually strolling with this stroller is where this model fails a bit. Uppababy engineering to me seems pretty oriented towards the US market, with a definite emphasis on folding and convertibility with various seating options and such over any actual terrain capability. And the Cruz really shows this direction in design. With super tiny wheels and virtually no suspension, this stroller is really for smooth urban use only, in a part of the world where it doesn't snow. Punctum. There's no way around that, folks. Okay, let's have a look at the mechanics. Starting at the top, both the handle and the central fold mechanism on both the Uppababy Cruz and actually the Vista are really the best designed portion of the stroller in my opinion. So the whole larger construction of the stroller is very, very rigid, tightly constructed, a lot of tight points of connection, and there's a lot of metal in how it functions. And it has very intuitive mechanisms. It has this telescopic handle with a center button to activate it, pull it up to various positions. In general, when you have this sort of a setup, it means you have internal wires, and there can sometimes be problems with these because the wires are connected at various points to the chassis, down below and up above. And of course, a lot of times with those connection points, there's a lot of plastic, and that plastic can break. But barring any sort of accidents in which those mechanisms break, it's quite nice to have the telescopic setup because it gives you a little bit extra heave when you're trying to push your way over curbs and other sorts of terrain. As far as the actual fold is concerned, it's accomplished a little bit further down with these two triggers here. You pull up and you push it down. And all of the points inside here related to this mechanism are pretty much made of metal and very sturdily constructed. So A+ design for the handle and the central locking mechanism, certainly, of the Uppababy Cruz. Okay, we'll have a look at a few things on the lower back end of the stroller. First and foremost is the brake system. The brake system on the Cruz is quite well constructed. I like the fact that it has the larger brake element in the middle because it means that the mechanisms really only have to have moving portions further to the sides, here and here, which means you don't have to have any really long elements, especially wires that would activate the brake system from the central portion. Beyond the brake system, the back end has a few noticeable defects. Number one is that it does not have any sort of dedicated suspension. There's no sorts of large springs or anything built into the chassis in order to help with suspension on the back end. And it of course also has 10-inch rear wheels, which really puts down the level of terrain capability for the stroller in general. The wheels also sit quite tight into the chassis itself. If you do wind up having ball bearing issues in the future with this sort of a stroller, it means that these wheels are going to come into contact with the chassis, and that's also going to impact drivability. But the number one problem really on the back end is going to be lack of suspension and the very small back wheels. Okay, a few notes to make on the front end. The front end does have a little bit better suspension than the back end because there is some suspension built into the design of the fork itself, but it is really insufficient for any sort of terrain capability. In addition, of course, the front wheels are 8-inch instead of 10-inch, again reducing its ability to drive over obstacles. The swivel lock itself, which is activated on the side here, is actually a little bit sturdier than other swivel locks that make use of the same design. There's a pin that goes down into the fork,
and it's a relatively robust system. The key problem you're going to wind up with the front end on an Uppababy Cruz is going to be that over time the wheels can have a tendency to develop a wobbling or a flittering sort of a problem if you go a little bit too fast. This is a common problem for four-wheel strollers that have swivel wheels in the front, and it occurs because the axle, which pushes up into the housing mechanism, begins to wear down the internal channel of that housing mechanism and thus reduces how the front wheel is pressed up tightly against the housing mechanisms themselves. So we've done a few videos on how to fix this, and one way you can fix this is with O-rings or wave washers, and there's a few other ways. So I recommend you watch some of those videos if you're having this sort of problem. I would say in general that the key reason you get this problem on the Uppababy Cruz is simply because people are trying to use this stroller in terrain that it's really not built for, and probably with a bit more weight than it should have. And it's sort of an added problem with this model because it is so sturdy higher up on the stroller. So you have this really rigid, tight sort of a setup on the upper portion of the stroller, while the connection points with the wheels, and particularly the front wheels, is a bit weaker. And it's sort of that old saying of a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So as you're going over terrain with weight and it's rattling around, all of that damage is really going to be occurring in areas like this that are not quite as strong as the rigid upper end of the stroller.
So how do you know if the Cruz would fit your lifestyle then? Despite the rigid and sturdy construction of its chassis, the small wheels and lack of suspension mean that the Cruz really fails to compete in the mid-size class with the Cybex Pream, the Bugaboo Fox, or the Stock Explorer, for example. But it does have its niche against slightly smaller strollers like the Emalunga NXT30, Baby Jogger City Mini, or the Stolka Scoot. I would say that if you live in a smooth urban environment where it doesn't snow, and you need a stroller that's light, small, and easy to fold for use with a car, and you prefer a stroller that emphasizes child comfort over driving performance, preferably for a younger child, then the Cruz might be a good fit for you. Just be sure ahead of time that this is what you need and how you plan to use a stroller. We hope this video has been useful to you, and if it has, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.